Rebecca, oh my goodness, I'm such a huge fan of you as an actress and now as a filmmaker. I'm so excited right now. You have no idea.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear it.
Yes, I'm so excited. So, for your directorial debut, girl, you chose the hardest thing to do. You adapted a book into a feature film, and you did it in black and white. What was the impetus for that? And I know that David Bowie had a little something to do with all of that somewhere and mixed up in there. So talk to me about that.
He did. That's true. Okay, where to begin? Well, the black and white is was really like an idea that I had 13 years ago when I read the book. It was, sort of it became such of a piece of how I saw the film that I couldn't imagine it without it. And many people told me to not do that because then they would give me the budget to make the movie. So I just made it for less, but made it in black and white. But the reasoning behind it is really, at first blush, it appears that it's because I'm making a very literal connection. Like, this is a black and white world, therefore the movie is in black and white. But actually, I think what I'm trying to do is ask an audience to interrogate why they make that literal perception, because black and white film isn't black and white. It's gray. It's 1,000 shades of gray, just like everything else in this movie. And the limits of these categories, or trying to reduce someone down to one definition, is messy. Like, there is no monolithic idea of blackness or whiteness or femaleness or maleness or gayness or straightness. And this is all part of it, really. So I think the black and white really forces you to interrogate that. And I think also to think about your perception. I love it when people watch the movie and they're like, I see absolutely this. And then someone else comes along and is like, but I see absolutely this. And how can you say that you saw that? And I'm sort of sitting there thinking, but none of you is seeing anything as it is in the real world, because the real world doesn't look gray like this. So, there's also a kind of, it's a constant sort of reevaluating what makes you make these assumptions.
But that's a good earmark of a great director when you invoke that kind of conversation where people are like, verbally dueling it out as to what their opinions are about what they saw and how they felt about it. So
I love that.
snaps and claps to you for that, girl. So passing, I feel like all of us are passing for something. We're either passing with our status financially, or, chasing clout, or trying to be younger, passing to be younger. And in this case, someone is passing to be in another race. And I find it very interesting that you had that situation in your family, as did I. I had an aunt named Aunt Frances out here who—
I have an Aunt Frances.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you did? She was passing for white, and to this day we don't know what happened to her. When the guy that she married, who was a white man, found out that she was passing for white, they had her put into an institution, and we're trying to find out what happened to her after that. But I wanted to know how you felt when that part of your life was divulged. Did it like crack your heart open? How did that make you feel?
Yes, well, I'm very much on the other side of that narrative. Like, I'm the descendant of the family that kept it secret. I mean, by the time my grandfather had my mother and her sisters, he was already living fully as a white man with his wife. My grandmother was Dutch. So it's something that I always knew a little bit and also didn't know necessarily, because these stories are just hidden, and a child respects the wishes of a parent and does whatever, if a parent says this is something we don't talk about, then they internalize that this is something we don't talk about. And that gets passed on to me. But I always had this strange relationship to it, because there I was looking at my mother, and to me, she always looked black. I don't know how else to say it. And I found it fascinating that I knew other people who looked like her and were identifying as black. And it wasn't that she wasn't, she just couldn't really. She didn't have the language. She'd not been, socialized black. So there was a sort of disconnect about whether or not this was, and, also her grandfather never confirmed it entirely. And she would say things to me like, maybe I'm black, maybe, she would say, maybe we're black actually, or maybe we're Native American. I don't really know. It's probably a little bit of something, a little bit of something. And when I read the book, but when I read the book, it was sort of a light bulb moment, because I didn't have that language, I think in the Black community, people know that word. And
Yeah.
how I grew up, that word didn't, come into play. So when I read the book, I was like, oh, he was passing. Of course, that makes sense. This is why there's all this mystery. This is why we don't know family members. This is why all this stuff, and it was really like the beginning of the road of investigation for me. I mean, 13 years later, I now know a lot about my grandfather's story. And I know that he was Black. Both of his parents were Black. He was, socialized that way. And then he made the decision to pass somewhere in sort of the middle of his life. And he passed white, but he also passed Indigenous, interestingly. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot going on.
A lot going on. I mean, we could talk about this one for a long time, but let's talk about the movie.
I wish I had so much more time to talk to you, because I wanted to talk to you about the music and that song that you listened to that inspired you to write. I have so many more questions, but I know my time is up. But hopefully I'll get an opportunity to talk to you where I can ask you like 5,000 other questions that I have about the movie and your process. But this has been a thrill for me. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your story too. Thank you.
My pleasure. Have a good one.